the twin moons of Kepler-44, to be cast their silvery light across the abandoned mining complex, creating long shadows between rusted extraction towers. Marcus Reed stood on the observation deck of Station Omega-7, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of synthetic coffee. 3 years had passed since the Terran Mining Consortium declared the planet economically unviable and pulled out, taking civilization with them. Marcus had stayed behind as a maintenance volunteer during the temporary shutdown. One by one, his colleagues found reasons to leave: family emergencies, better opportunities, simple loneliness. Now he was the last ghost haunting this tomb of industrial ambition. He didn't mind the solitude. As the station's atmospheric engineer, he'd always preferred machines to people. Machines were predictable, logical. People left. The recycling systems hummed their familiar lullaby as Marcus completed his evening rounds. Environmental controls stable. Water reclamation at 83% efficiency. Fusion reactor purring in its deep vault. He'd just finished updating maintenance logs when the sound came. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Marcus froze. In 3 years of absolute isolation, the only knocking came from thermal expansion or debris during dust storms. This was different, rhythmic, deliberate, alive. Moving to the main airlock. His heart hammered as scenarios flashed through his mind. Pirates, corporate investigators, scavengers hunting salvage. The external sensors painted a grainy image on his monitor: a tall, slender figure with 2 smaller heat signatures pressed close. "Who's there?" he called through the calm system. A female voice answered, accented with liquid Valthari consonants, but speaking heavily accented standard. "Please, my children are hungry. We have nowhere else to go." The words hit him like a physical shock. He'd been alone so long that another voice felt surreal. The thermal image revealed the smaller figures more clearly. Children, definitely. Children, clinging to their mother's legs. Every instinct screamed to maintain lockdown. Unknown aliens could mean anything from first contact to elaborate trap. But the exhaustion in that voice, the way the mother swayed on her feet, stepped back from the door. The figure complied. Marcus initiated decontamination, atmospheric scans, showing compatible breathing mixture, no obvious toxins. The outer door hissed open. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Valthari were known throughout human space as elegant traders, but this woman bore little resemblance to the well-dressed diplomats he'd encountered. Her lavender skin was sun-darkened and dust-streaked. Deep violet-black hair hung in matted tangles. Traditional Valthari robes had been reduced to strategic fabric strips, a halter top, and wraparound skirt that ended mid-thigh. Her feet were bare, soles cracked and bleeding, but her eyes caught him, large, luminous amber that held desperate dignity. She wasn't begging despite obvious desperation. She stood straight, chin raised, meeting his gaze directly. The children pressed against her legs were clearly hers. The girl, perhaps 8, had her mother's violet skin and amber eyes, but her face was sharp with suspicion and premature wisdom. She watched Marcus like a cornered animal. The boy, younger, maybe 4, clung to his mother's skirt with boneless exhaustion. "My name is Zena Kresh," the woman said, her accent making standard words sound musical despite their desperate context. "These are my children, Kira and Jorik. We have been traveling for many days. They have not eaten in." She swallowed hard. "I cannot remember how long. How did you get here?" "This system is restricted." Zena's grip on her children tightened. "We escaped from slavers. Stole a shuttle. It crashed in the valley. 3 days. Walk from here." She gestured to a small bundle torn cloth wrapped around emergency rations and a water recycler. "I have nothing to offer you," she continued, voice breaking slightly. "Nothing except myself. One night. Just one night, and feed my children. Please." The words struck Marcus like a blow. He'd heard stories about refugee fate and border systems, the sex trade flourishing where corporate authority ended and pirate rule began. But hearing it from someone standing before him, seeing resigned desperation in her eyes, "You don't need to offer me anything," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." Zena blinked, clearly not expecting such simple response. She hesitated, as if this might be a trap, then guided her children through the airlock. Marcus sealed the outer door and initiated pressurization. The inner door opened into his main habitat modular combination workshop, kitchen, and bedroom reflecting 3 years of solitary adaptation. Tools hung from magnetic strips, hydroponic. Gardens occupied one corner, his unmade bed built into an alcove. Zena's eyes swept everything with desperate attention, cataloging threats and opportunities. Her gaze lingered on food preparation area, water dispensers, warmth radiators. "Sit," Marcus said, gesturing towards salvaged chairs round a low table. "I'll get you something to eat." He selected ration packs from carefully organized supplies, hands shaking slightly. Standard high-nutrition meals designed for long-term storage. Not gourmet, but providing everything growing bodies needed. Zena stood exactly where he'd left her. Children pressed to her sides. She hadn't moved toward chairs, hadn't relaxed even slightly. Her amber eyes tracked his movements with wariness. Learned from experience that kindness often came with strings. Marcus set ration packs on the table, activating heating elements. Synthetic protein and vitamin-enriched grain smells filled the air. Jorek's stomach growled audibly, but still none moved. "It's safe," Marcus said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." Zena searched his face for a long moment, then slowly guided her children to chairs. She helped Jorek climb up, settled Kira beside him. Only then did she sit, perched on edge as if ready to flee. Food finished heating with a soft chime. Marcus distributed packs, noting how Zena's hands trembled. She immediately tore open Jorek's pack, testing temperature against her wrist before feeding him small spoonfuls. Kira waited her turn, watching Marcus with sharp, suspicious eyes. Only after both children were eating did Zena open her own pack. Even then, she ate slowly. Mechanically, attention focused entirely on her offspring. Marcus realized she was rationing herself, ensuring children got enough before worrying about her own needs. He retreated to his workbench, giving them space while trying not to stare. It had been so long since he'd shared this space that he'd forgotten how small it felt with others. The sounds of their eating seemed impossibly loud after years of silence. When they finished, Zena carefully collected empty containers. "Where should I put these?" "Recycling chute is over there." Marcus pointed to a wall slot, watching her dispose of containers with automatic shipboard efficiency. "You said you were on a slaver ship." Zena's shoulders tensed. "Yes, captured 6 months ago during a raid. On our colony. My husband," she stopped, swallowed hard. "He did not survive the capture." As darkness settled over the station and the family prepared for sleep, Marcus found himself remembering what he'd lost, what he'd chosen to give up. Outside, twin moons painted silver patterns while inside, for damaged souls began learning to trust again. The soft hum of the recycling systems served as Station Omega-7's morning alarm, a mechanical heartbeat that had marked Marcus's solitary days for 3 years. But this morning was different. Quiet voices speaking in melodic Valthari drifted from the sleeping area, followed by the padding of small feet across the metal floor. Marcus emerged from his alcove to find Zena already awake, finger-combing Kira's tangled hair while Jorek rubbed sleep from his eyes. In the artificial dawn light, he could see details he'd missed the night before: the elegant bone structure that marked Zena as Valthari nobility, despite her current circumstances, and the way she moved with fluid grace even in her exhausted state. "Good morning," he said softly, not wanting to startle them. Zena looked up, and those remarkable amber eyes caught the light. "You are preparing food again," she observed, watching him move to the food preparation area. "Seemed like the thing to do. We cannot continue to take without giving back." She gently extracted herself from her children and stood, smoothing her makeshift skirt. "I am skilled in mechanical repair, system maintenance. Your station shows signs of delayed upkeep." She was right. Marcus had been putting off several non-critical repairs, not from laziness, but because some jobs required multiple hands. The atmospheric recycling system needed complete filter replacement. The water reclamation plant had a persistent leak. The hydroponic gardens could use optimization. "I can't pay you," he said. "Shelter and food for my children is payment enough." After breakfast, Marcus gave them a tour of Station Omega-7. The habitat module was just one part of a larger complex. The fusion reactor occupied the central core, surrounded by radiation shielding. The atmospheric processing plant hummed in its sealed section, scrubbing carbon dioxide and maintaining their life-sustaining gas mixture. Hydroponic gardens stretched through several compartments. Xena asked intelligent questions, revealing solid understanding of starship engineering that translated well to station maintenance. Her questions exposed gaps in Marcus's own knowledge areas, where he'd learned to work around problems rather than solve them. This recycling unit is operating at 60% efficiency, she said, running her hands along pipes in the water reclamation plant. The thermal exchangers are clogged with mineral deposits. I know. I've been meaning to flush the system, but it requires a 12-hour shutdown. I can't afford to lose water reclamation for that long. Not if you do it properly. You have backup tanks, yes, and emergency recyclers. Marcus nodded. Then we can maintain minimal processing while cleaning the primary system. It will take longer, but we will not lose water production. It was an elegant solution that hadn't occurred to him. Marcus realized his 3 years of isolation had made him conservative, focused on maintaining status quo rather than improving systems. They spent the day working together. Xena proved an excellent mechanic, her slender fingers perfect for reaching tight spaces, while her engineering knowledge guided their repairs. The children played nearby Jorik content to arrange spare parts into elaborate patterns, while Kira maintained her watchful vigilance. As they worked, Xena began to relax slightly. Not completely. Marcus doubted she was capable of that yet, but enough to allow conversation. Beyond strictly necessary communication. You said you have been alone for 3 years, she said while calibrating pressure sensors. That is a long time for a human. Humans are more adaptable than most people think. Adaptation and thriving are different things. She glanced at him across the equipment housing. You are not thriving, you are surviving. Marcus paused in his work. What's the difference? Someone who is thriving would have made more repairs to this station, would have optimized systems instead of just maintaining them. She gestured around them, would have made this place feel alive instead of just functional. Her words hit closer to home than Marcus cared to admit. He'd been maintaining the station, yes, but also maintaining emotional stasis, keeping everything running just well enough to sustain existence without really living. What about you? He asked. Before the slavers, were you thriving then? Xena's hands stilled. Yes, I was. I had a husband who loved me, children who felt safe, work that gave me purpose, a home. Her voice caught. I was an engineer on our colony's main processing plant. We were building something new, something beautiful. What happened? Pirates. They came fast, hit our defenses before we could react. The colonial government had been cutting the defense budget, said we were too far from trade routes to be worth attacking. She laughed bitterly. They were wrong. Marcus set down his tools, drawn by the pain in her voice. I'm sorry. My husband died trying to protect us. The children saw it happen. Xena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. They have nightmares. Kira thinks she must protect me now, because she could not protect her father. Jorik barely speaks anymore. Looking at the children, Marcus saw them in new light. Kira's suspicious. Watchfulness wasn't just caution, it was hypervigilance of a child who'd learned safety was illusion. Jorik's quiet clinginess was behavior of someone whose world had shattered, too young to understand why. How do you help them heal? He asked. I do not know. Xena's admission was barely audible. I have been so focused on keeping us alive, on getting us to safety. I have not known how to help them heal from what we have seen. Marcus reached out instinctively, then stopped himself. Physical comfort was a luxury none of them could afford. Yet, too much history, too much trauma stood between them. They're safe now, he said instead. That's the first step. Are we? Xena looked at him directly. Safe, I mean. You could turn us into authorities, claim salvage rights on our crashed shuttle, sell us back to slavers for bounty. I won't. How can I know that? Marcus thought for a moment. Because I've been alone for 3 years, and in all that time, I've never once called for a rescue ship. If I wanted to rejoin civilization, I would have done it already. I'm not interested in bounties or salvage rights. I just want to help. You, Zena studied his face with those penetrating amber eyes. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded slowly and returned to work. That evening, over dinner, Jorek surprised everyone by addressing Marcus directly. "Are you going to hurt Mama?" he asked in heavily accented standard. "No," Marcus said, meeting the boy's eyes. "I'm not going to hurt your mama, or you, or Kira, okay?" Jorek said finally, and returned to his food. As the family settled for sleep, Marcus watched from his alcove. Zena lay between her children, one arm around each, alert even in rest. The sight stirred something deep in his chest, a longing he'd thought successfully buried. Across the darkened room, Zena opened her eyes and looked at him. For a moment, they simply watched each other in silence. Then she mouthed two words, "Thank you." Outside, twin moons painted silver patterns, while inside, for damaged souls continued learning to trust. A week had passed since Zena and her children arrived at Station Omega-7, and the rhythms of shared life were beginning to establish themselves. Marcus woke each morning to the sound of Valthari lullabies as Zena comforted Jorek through his nightmares, or the soft murmur of her voice as she patiently answered Kira's endless questions about the station's systems. The changes were subtle but profound. The habitat module no longer felt like a tomb, it felt lived in. Small touches appeared daily. Zena had arranged the spare tools in more logical groupings. Jorek's colorful rock collections dotted various surfaces, and even Kira had begun leaving small drawings tucked into equipment panels where she thought no one would notice. Marcus found himself lingering over breakfast, reluctant to begin the day's work because it meant leaving the warm circle of their makeshift family. Zena seemed to sense this hesitation, often finding reasons to work alongside him rather than on separate projects. The hydroponics bay could use recalibration, she mentioned on their 8th morning together, watching him check the garden's nutrient levels. "The mineral balance is slightly off. Your vegetables are edible, but they could be more nutritious." Marcus looked at the green shoots that had been his pride for 3 years. "I thought they were doing well. They are surviving, like you were." Zena's amber eyes held a gentle challenge. "But they could be thriving." There was that word again. Thriving versus surviving. Marcus was beginning to understand the distinction, and it had everything to do with the 3 refugees who had transformed his sterile sanctuary into something resembling a home. They worked together in the garden, Zena's delicate fingers adjusting nutrient flows while Marcus handled the heavier recalibration work. The children played nearby, Jorek building elaborate towers from spare bolts, while Kira had discovered an old tablet and was teaching herself to read standard text. "She learns quickly," Marcus observed, watching Kira frown in concentration over the tablet's display. "Too quickly," Zena replied, sadness creeping into her voice. "She has had to grow up faster than any child should. On our home world, she would still be playing with dolls and learning simple songs. Instead, she knows how to kill and when to run." Marcus watched Kira for a moment, noting the rigid set of her small shoulders, the way she positioned herself to keep watch over both her mother and brother even while focused on reading. What was she like before? Curious, fearless in the way children should be, fearless, eager to explore, to ask questions, to trust that the adults would keep her safe. Zena's hands stilled on the nutrient controls she used to sing constantly. Little songs she made up about the flowers in our garden, or the patterns the twin suns made on our walls. "I have not heard her sing since her father died." Zena nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd spent so much time focusing on their immediate needs: food, shelter, safety, that he'd barely considered the deeper wounds they carried. "Tell me about him, your husband." For a moment, he thought Zena wouldn't answer. She was private about her past, sharing only what was necessary to explain their current situation. But something in his tone, or perhaps the growing trust between them, made her speak. "His name was Talon Kresh. He was a botanist, like you, but he specialized in atmospheric adaptation, making plants that could thrive in alien environments." Her voice grew soft with memory. "He had the gentlest hands, could coax life from the most stubborn soil. The children adored him." "How long were you married?" 10 years. We met in university. I was studying mechanical engineering. He was in agricultural sciences. We balanced each other. I understood how things worked. He understood how they could grow. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. We dreamed of terraforming dead worlds, bringing life to places like this. Marcus looked around the sterile hydroponic bay, seeing it suddenly through her eyes, functional but lifeless, surviving, not thriving. What would he have done differently here? He asked. Xena considered this, moving to examine the growing plants more closely. He would have planted for beauty as well as nutrition, flowers that served no purpose except to make the space feel alive. He would have created diversity, not just vegetables, but herbs that filled the air with scent, vines that softened the hard edges of the walls. We could do that, Marcus said quietly. I have some flower seeds in storage. Never saw the point in wasting space on non-essential crops. But, Xena looked at him with those penetrating amber eyes. But maybe I was wrong about what's essential. They worked in comfortable silence after that, but Marcus found his thoughts drifting to memories he'd kept carefully buried. His own lost dreams, his own failed marriage. Catherine had wanted children, a garden, a life built around growth and creation. He'd been too focused on advancement, on proving himself in the corporate hierarchy, to see what he was losing until it was gone. You are thinking of someone, Xena observed, her voice gentle. Marcus paused in his work. My ex-wife, Catherine. She would have liked your husband's philosophy about gardening. What happened between you? It was Marcus's turn to hesitate. He'd never spoken about Catherine to anyone, had buried that failure so deep he sometimes convinced himself it didn't matter anymore. But Xena had shared her grief, had trusted him with her children's stories. He owed her the same honesty. I was promoted to lead a survey team for the mining consortium. The assignment was supposed to be for 2 years, mapping potential extraction sites in the Outer Rim. Catherine wanted to come with me to set up a research station where she could study adaptation in extreme environments. He set down his tools, unable to continue working while the memories surfaced. I said no, told her it was too dangerous, that the mission was too important for distractions. She was not a distraction, Xena said softly. No, she was the best thing in my life, and I was too stupid to see it. Marcus felt the familiar ache of old regret. She left while I was away on the first survey mission. Divorce papers waiting when I got back. She'd already moved on, found someone who appreciated what she had to offer. And you came out here to hide. It wasn't a question, and Marcus didn't deny it. The Kepler assignment was supposed to be punishment. A dead-end posting for an engineer who'd proven he couldn't handle human relationships. Turned out it was exactly what I deserved. Xena moved closer, studying his face with those remarkable eyes. But you stayed even when you could have left, even when the punishment was over. Where was I going to go? Back to explain why I'd thrown away everything that mattered. You could go back now, she said quietly. Take us to the nearest civilized system. Claim credit for a rescue operation. Return as a hero instead of a failure. Marcus met her gaze directly. Is that what you want? What I want is to keep my children safe, to give them a chance to heal and grow, to find some small piece of the life we lost. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What I want is to feel safe enough to let my guard down, to trust that tomorrow will be better than today. Then stay, Marcus said, the words coming from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. Stay and help me turn this place into something worth staying for, not just surviving, thriving, the way your husband would have done it. Xena was quiet, for a long moment, her amber eyes searching his face. Finally, she nodded. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I think I would like that very much. Across the bay, Kira looked up from her tablet, and for just a moment, Marcus thought he heard her humming, softly under her breath, the first hint of music from a child who had forgotten how to sing. 2 weeks into their shared existence, the rhythms of Station Omega-7 had settled into something that felt almost like normalcy. Marcus woke each morning to the soft sounds of his makeshift family, beginning their days, Anna's gentle voice coaxing Jorik through his morning routine, Kira's quiet questions about the day's planned activities. The hydroponic gardens now bloomed with small flowers alongside the vegetables, tiny splashes of color that transformed the sterile bay into something warmer, more alive. Marcus had begun teaching Kira basic engineering principles while she helped with routine maintenance, her quick mind absorbing concepts that had taken him months to master in university. Jorik had grown comfortable enough to seek Marcus out for attention, sometimes climbing into his lap during the evening meal, or bringing him carefully arranged collections of interesting components he'd found around the station. But it was Xena who occupied most of Marcus's thoughts. Their working partnership had evolved into something deeper, stolen glances across equipment, housings, conversations that lingered longer than necessary, the careful dance of to damaged people learning to trust again. She'd begun leaving small touches of beauty throughout the station, a flowering vine trained around a support beam, smooth stones arranged in pleasing patterns, even her own sketches tucked discreetly where only he would find them. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when the station's long-range sensors detected an approaching ship. Marcus stared at the display, his blood running cold. In 3 years of isolation, no one had come looking for Station Omega-7. The ship was small, fast, and broadcasting no identification codes characteristics that suggested smugglers or worse. Xena, he called, trying to keep the alarm from his voice. Can you come here, please? She appeared at his side within seconds. The children closed behind her. One look at his expression told her everything she needed to know. How long until they arrive? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her amber eyes. 6 hours, maybe 7 if they're being cautious. Xena was already moving, gathering the children close. Kira, Jorik, we need to pack. Quickly. Wait, Marcus said, catching her arm gently. You don't have to run. Not anymore. You do not. Understand. If they are looking for us, then we make sure they don't find you. Marcus moved to his security console, fingers flying over controls he hadn't touched in years. The station has hiding places, maintenance shafts, sealed compartments, places even a thorough search might miss. Xena shook her head. That will not work if they have thermal scanners, and if they take you for questioning. I won't tell them anything. You do not know what they might do to make you talk. Her grip on the children tightened. These are not civilized people, Marcus. They are hunters who see other beings as property. Kira spoke up, her young voice hard with premature wisdom. We should kill them when they land, like Mama killed the guards on the ship. Kira, no, Xena said sharply. Why not? They want to hurt us. We should hurt them first. Marcus knelt to Kira's level, meeting her fierce amber eyes. Because once you start solving problems by killing people, it becomes easier to kill the next time. And the time after that, your mama killed those guards to protect you and Jorik. But she didn't want to. It hurt her to do it. Then what do? We do, Kira demanded. Marcus stood, his mind racing through possibilities. The station's defenses were minimal, intended to deter scavengers, not determine slavers. But there were other options, systems he could modify, plans he could execute, if he had enough time. We fight smart, he said finally. We use what we have. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus activated every defensive system the station possessed, while simultaneously working to mask their thermal signatures. He rerouted power flows to create confusing heat patterns, programmed automated responses to make the station seem abandoned but operational. Xena proved invaluable, her knowledge of slaver tactics helping them anticipate likely search patterns. She showed him how to create false readings on biological scanners, how to rig equipment to fail at strategic moments, how to leave subtle signs that would suggest the station's sole occupant had departed recently. As the ship entered final approach, they retreated to a maintenance shaft deep in the station's core, surrounded by enough radiation shielding to mask their presence from all but the most sophisticated sensors. It was cramped, uncomfortable, and terrifying, especially for the children, who had to remain absolutely silent while strangers invaded their new sanctuary. The waiting was agony. They could hear voices echoing through the station's corridors, the heavy tread of boots on metal decking, the electronic whine of scanning equipment. Marcus held his breath as the search party passed within meters of their hiding place, praying that his hastily rigged countermeasures would hold. Temperature readings suggest recent habitation, a gruff voice said, distorted by the calm system. But whoever was here is gone now. Check the shuttle bay, another voice replied. See if they took a ship, more waiting, more barely controlled. Terror as Jorik pressed his face against Zena's shoulder and Kira gripped Marcus's hand. With fierce determination, finally, after what felt like hours, the voices retreated. The sounds of departure echoed through the station airlocks, cycling, engines powering up. The gradual fade of propulsion systems as the ship pulled away. They waited another hour before emerging from their hiding place, muscles cramped and nerves frayed. The station bore evidence of the search overturned storage containers, accessed computer terminals, equipment that had been moved and carelessly replaced. But they were safe. They had survived. They will be back, Zena said quietly as they surveyed the damage when they realized their search was incomplete. Then we'll be ready for them. Marcus replied, this station has more surprises than they know. That night, as they worked to repair the damage and strengthen their defenses, something fundamental shifted between them. The shared danger had stripped away the last barriers of caution and uncertainty. When Zena's hand brushed his while they worked on a damaged console, neither pulled away. When their eyes met across the habitat module, the careful distance they'd maintained began to crumble. Marcus, she said softly, and her voice held a note he'd never heard before. Not desperation or gratitude, but something warmer, more personal. He moved closer, drawn by the amber depths of her eyes, by the way the station's lights caught the violet undertones of her skin. Zena, the kiss, when it came, was gentle and hesitant to people who had forgotten how to be vulnerable, exploring the possibility of something beautiful. It lasted only a moment before they pulled apart, both breathing hard, both aware that they had crossed a line from which there was no return. Is this wise? Zena whispered. Probably not, Marcus admitted, but I don't care anymore. Neither did she, as the station settled into its nighttime rhythm around them. They discovered that sometimes the most important things in life came not from careful planning, but from the courage to reach for happiness when it finally, unexpectedly, appeared within grasp. 3 months had passed since the slaver ship's failed search, and Station Omega-7 had transformed into something Marcus barely recognized. The sterile corridors now bloomed with Zena's carefully tended gardens, not just the practical vegetables of survival, but cascading vines that softened harsh metal edges and flowering plants that filled the air with sweet fragrance. The children's laughter echoed through spaces that had known only mechanical humming for years. Marcus stood in the observation deck's morning light, watching Jorik chase luminescent butterflies through the hydroponics bay while Kira worked alongside Zena, learning to calibrate atmospheric processors with the focused intensity she brought to everything. The boy's nightmares had faded to occasional whimpers, while Kira had begun singing again softly at first, then with growing confidence as she remembered what it felt like to be a child. The changes weren't just in the station, Marcus had discovered. Muscles he'd forgotten he possessed, both physical and emotional. Zena's presence had awakened parts of himself he'd thought permanently buried. They moved around each other now with the easy intimacy of partners, sharing tasks and conversations and quiet moments when the children were asleep. But even paradise had its shadows. The long-range sensors are picking up another ship, Marcus announced during their evening meal, trying to keep his voice calm. Different configuration than last time. Bigger. Zena's hand tightened on her utensil, but her expression remained steady. How long? 2 days, maybe 3. Kira looked up from her food with those sharp amber eyes. Are we going to hide again? If we need to, Marcus said. But this ship is broadcasting identification codes. It might be legitimate salvage crew or corporate investigators. Or it might be slavers with better equipment, Zena added quietly. They spent the next day preparing their contingencies, escape routes mapped, emergency supplies cached, defensive systems checked and rechecked. But as the ship approached, its transmissions revealed something unexpected. Station Omega-7. This is Captain Nara Vex of the independent freighter Wandering Star. I'm looking for my sister. Zena Kresh. Please respond if you can hear this. The words hit the habitat module like a physical shock. Zena went completely still, her face cycling through emotions too complex to follow. Nara, she whispered. My sister is alive. The reunion, when it came, was everything Marcus had expected and feared. Naravex proved to be a female Valthari who shared Xena's elegant bone structure, but possessed a harder edge, the result of years spent navigating the dangerous margins of interstellar commerce. She embraced her sister with fierce joy, swept the children into her arms, and wept openly at finding them alive and safe. But her amber eyes, so similar to Xena's, held questions when she looked at Marcus. "You are the human who has been sheltering them," she said, studying him with calculating intensity. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus replied. "They've given me more than I ever gave them." Nara's expression softened slightly. "Yes, I can see that. My sister looks different, happier, more at peace than I expected after what she has endured." The captain's ship carried news from the wider galaxy. The slaver network that had captured Xena's family was being systematically dismantled by joint human Valthari task forces. The colonial government that had failed to protect their homeworld had been dissolved and replaced. There were opportunities now for refugees to reclaim their lives, to start over in safe places. "I have found work with a terraforming consortium," Nara explained over dinner. "They are establishing agricultural colonies in the Centauri expansion zone. Clean worlds, good soil, strong defenses. There would be places for you and the children, Xena. Good places." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Of course Xena would want to leave. She'd never intended Station Omega-7 to be permanent, just a refuge, until something better came along. He had no right to expect her to stay in his self-imposed exile when real life was calling her back to the galaxy. "It sounds wonderful," Xena said carefully, not looking at Marcus. The children would have other children to play with, schools, a future. "Yes," Nara agreed. "And you could practice engineering again, real engineering, not just maintenance work. Help build something new instead of just keeping old systems running." That night, after Nara had settled into guest quarters and the children were asleep, Marcus and Xena walked through the station's corridors in heavy silence. Everything looked different now, not like a home they'd built together, but like a way station they'd soon abandon. "You should go," Marcus said finally, the words tearing at his throat. "Your sister is right. The children deserve better than this." Xena stopped walking and turned to face him. "What about what I deserve? You deserve everything. A real life, not hiding in an abandoned mining station with a man who's spent 3 years running from his failures. Is that what you think I have been doing here? Hiding?" Marcus couldn't meet her eyes. "Haven't you been?" Xena moved closer, forcing him to look at her. "I have been healing, learning to trust again, building something beautiful with someone I love. That is not hiding, Marcus. That is living." The words hit him like a physical blow. "You love me. Did you think I was just grateful? That I stayed because I had nowhere else to go?" Her amber eyes blazed with emotion. "I stayed because you showed me what kindness looked like without conditions. Because you gave my children space to be children again. Because you looked at me and saw Xena, not just a desperate refugee or a commodity to be used." Marcus reached for her, pulling her close. "I love you too. That's why you should go. You and the children we deserve to choose our own path." Xena interrupted. "And I choose you. I choose this life we have built together. If you want us to stay." "Of course I want you to stay. But I can't ask you to give up a real future for this place. This place is our future, but it does not have to be just this place." Xena smiled, and in that expression Marcus saw possibilities he'd never dared imagine. "Nara's ship can carry us anywhere we wanted to go. We could find a real world, one with soil and sky and room for the children to grow. We could build our own terraforming operation, make something truly beautiful together." The conversation continued long into the night, dreams and plans taking shape in the space between them. By morning, they had decided not to stay, not to separate, but to begin again together, taking the love they'd found in the darkness and carrying it toward the light. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of their new home, a small agricultural station on the moon of Kepler 438c, watching twin suns paint golden light across fertile soil where their first crops were already sprouting. Xena worked in the gardens below while Kira and Jorah played with the children of other settlers who'd joined their growing community. "Are you ready?" Zena asked, appearing at his side in the simple white dress they'd chosen for their wedding ceremony. Marcus turned to look at her, truly beautiful now, ember eyes bright with joy, violet skin glowing with health and happiness. I've been ready for 3 years. I just didn't know it. Hand in hand, they walked toward their future, leaving the shadows of their past behind them forever. In the fertile soil of their new world, love had finally found room to grow.